Joining me now is Susie McClannahan, who is the Senior Manager of the Fair Housing Rights Program at the Equal Rights Center. Hey, Susie, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. I have been on your website. There is in the Washington Informer Home Supplement, a lot of nuggets from your Know Your Rights aspect of the website. And so I really want to be able to assist our readers, viewers, subscribers. So first, tell us a little bit about your role at the Equal Rights Center.
Yeah, so my name is Susie McClannahan. I'm the Senior for Housing Rights Program Manager at the Equal Rights Center. And we are a civil rights organization based in Washington, D.C. that seeks to identify and eliminate discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations, both here in our home community of the D.C. metropolitan region, as well as nationwide.
Excellent. And so, as I mentioned, that there's a Know Your Rights article, and a lot of folks don't necessarily think that there are rights as a homeowner or even a renter. So this is basically discussing, protecting oneself as a renter or a homeowner, which is super useful when searching for an apartment or home buying. Can you share a little bit about what happens when homeowners, prospective home buyers don't know their rights?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, so I've been at the Equal Rights Center for about 8 years now. And before I started, I couldn't have told you what my rights were either. So I think that there's a lot of lack of knowledge, and that really speaks to the need to make sure that we do know our rights so that they can be respected. What we do know, right, home buying is a very confusing process and it can move very quickly. You can put an offer on a home and have 30 days to get through all the paperwork, jump through all the hoops, and close on that home. And so things are moving at a very fast pace, and it can be really hard to identify potential discrimination. That being said, discrimination can occur at any part of the home buying process, including, for instance, having a real estate agent steer a home buyer to certain neighborhoods based on assumptions about where they want to live. It could be a lender giving less favorable term offers or worse customer service to an individual based on a protected identity when they're trying to get a mortgage. It could include, during a home appraisal, assumptions about the value of the home based on the homeowner that lives there or the neighborhood in which that home is located. And all of that can lead to really devastating consequences, both for home buyers and homeowners. It can mean that a home buyer unfortunately misses out on a chance to purchase what would have been their dream home. It can mean that they're paying more for a mortgage and ultimately less able to accumulate kind of wealth through that home ownership in the long term. And for more broadly, kind of for our community, what it means is that we continue to have severe neighborhood segregation, both by race and national origin, and that we continue to undervalue homes in neighborhoods of color, and especially in Black neighborhoods.
So there are these protected classes, and there's local jurisdictions like DC, which have a longer list perhaps than the federal list, and some different states have different lists. But regardless, if we have the local, the state, and the federal anti-discrimination laws, why does housing discrimination still happen?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's very frustrating, right? We have these laws. The Fair Housing Act, the Federal Fair Housing Act, was passed in 1968, more than half a century ago, due to activism pushing for civil rights, especially by Black community leaders, to address racism and segregation within the United States nationwide. And we got this really great legislation out of it that makes housing discrimination illegal, and yet we still see it happening. And this really speaks to the importance of enforcement, and that our civil rights laws are only as meaningful as they are followed. And so that we need to make sure that housing discrimination, in order to stamp it out, that those housing providers know they will be held accountable if they commit discrimination. Yet, for individuals who are reporting housing discrimination, right, this can be one of the worst experiences in someone's life. And to go through the reporting process, which could take, anywhere from 6 months to several years, and relive that experience over and over, resharing your story, is extremely traumatic. And this is why it's really important that enforcement is happening not just by those who are experiencing it, but proactively on a systemic level by other organizations and agencies, to ensure that discrimination is uncovered and stopped before it can ever directly impact somebody personally. And so one of the roles, our organization helps to fill that gap by engaging in a variety of systemic work to try to address discrimination and stamp it out, so that individuals never have this experience. And one of the ways we do that is through civil rights testing. And so that is a tool that essentially objectively, it's an objective tool used to determine if and how discrimination may be occurring. For instance, we did an investigation a couple of years ago where we had white women and Black women testers go to various leasing offices throughout the DC area and disclose that they had a criminal conviction. And what we found is that white women who disclosed a criminal conviction were frequently told that they were more likely to be approved than Black women describing the same conviction, right? And so in this case, we had a criminal record screening policy that somehow was different depending on the race of the person who disclosed their record. And so so civil rights testing can help be a tool to identify discrimination, especially that's more subtle, where an individual might not be able to recognize what's going on, or to help substantiate and kind of replicate what happened to that individual and show that it's occurring.
Very interesting. So some of these protected classes are gender, age, sexuality. So do these also apply to those who rent?
Yes, absolutely. This is a great question. The Federal Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in any housing-related transaction. And so that includes not only buying a home, but renting. It applies to getting a mortgage, getting homeowners insurance, renters insurance. It applies to condominium associations or cooperatives. So this law is really quite broad. And it prohibits discrimination nationwide based on race, color, national origin, which refers to where you or your ancestors are from, religion. It also protects based on sex, which includes sexual orientation and gender identity, and disability and familial status, which refers to having children under the age of 18 in one's home. And you reference, for instance, age, which is protected locally in Washington, D.C., and there are a myriad of other protected identities at the local and state level, depending on where you're located. And so if you're ever not sure what your rights are, that's something that you can contact us, and we can let you know what the protected classes are in a given jurisdiction. Because I don't want to take 30 minutes kind of reading out the list for every city and county in our area.
Right.
But in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, one of the common protected identities is source of income. And so that refers to how you pay your rent. And this is one of the most frequent complaints that we see at the ERC. And typically for source of income discrimination, what we are seeing is that people with housing vouchers, so also called sometimes Section 8 or housing choice vouchers, are experiencing discrimination from landlords who do not want to rent to them, meaning that the subsidy that they're getting to help make it possible for them to have long-term housing stability isn't serving its purpose because they're experiencing discrimination by landlords. And so this is, I would say, a particularly rampant form of discrimination in our region that we are working to try to stamp out.
So how do you stamp that out? Like if I am a resident, let's say, and I'm looking to buy a home and I'm, a little concerned that something bad is happening. Like, what is it like? What do I do to give you guys a call? What is it like to work with you? If there is, in fact, an instance of discrimination, is there court or mediation or some advocacy campaign that just unfolds?
Yeah, so at the Equal Rights Center, if someone contacts us to report possible housing discrimination, we'll first do an intake to better understand both the circumstances of what happened and also identify what their desired outcome or resolution is. So the most common form of assistance we offer is just direct advocacy with the housing provider to address the issue that occurred. So for instance, a lot of our clients experience possible discrimination during the rental screening process, where they're applying to rent somewhere and they were denied for what was likely an illegal reason. And we can send a letter to the landlord to educate them about the landlord about that person's rights and ask that their application be reconsidered so that they can ultimately move into the unit. To give an example in the home buying context, we were recently contacted by a person with a disability who had an emotional support animal. And regardless of whether you're in a no pets building or you have other restrictions around pets, people with disabilities who have an assistance animal, whether a service or emotional support animal, have a right to have that animal. But they were in the home buying process and the cooperative said, well, we're going to need some time to think about this. So, you might miss out on this home. And so it'll take us months. So you can buy the home and find out that you can have the animal, or you can just, move on. And so we wrote a letter explaining that actually they couldn't do that. And so that allowed the individual to comfortably move forward with the home buying process, knowing that their rights would be respected and they would be able to have their animal in the home without kind of worrying about how the association was going to respond in the future. We also assist people with filing complaints either with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also called HUD, or with a local human rights office, such as the D.C. Office of Human Rights, or in Maryland, the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. And we will go through that entire complaint process with the individual, from the first step of filing the initial paperwork to going all the meetings, going to the mediation, the investigation interview, to hopefully result in a resolution that satisfies the individual to resolve what happened to them. Lastly, people do have a right to file a lawsuit in court regarding their claims of housing discrimination instead of going through the administrative complaint process. That being said, the ERC, Equal Rights Center, we don't have legal services and we don't have attorneys on staff, so we would be unable to assist with going through court.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you, Susie, for all of this information. I'm sure there's many more issues and resources that you have, so our readers can go to the Equal Rights Center website, which is equalrightscenter.org. And again, to those watching, make sure you check out the article, Know Your Rights as a Home Buyer and Homeowner, in our home ownership edition, which also includes insights on, breaking through as a first-time home buyer and keeping a home in the family, and has also resource about selling to upgrade your home. All right, back to you, Denise. Thanks again, Susie.
Thanks so much.